Hello there, my patriot friends. For one fleeting moment, my brain actually felt excited about our new battle ahead. Because I think one of the things that was most disconcerting is that I never expected this particular battle. The election issue, we know what that is. I never expected this. So I have to get used to it, but I can see a lot of benefits. First of all, it was good for me to take some time off. And I encourage any of you that need that, if you are feeling unhappy, discouraged, just take some time off. Think about something else. Because I found that by being very careful about what I listen to and how I listen to it, I actually am doing very well. And I'm excited about our power. Never, ever, ever give up our power. We are more powerful than you realize. I kind of like that President Trump is taking time off himself. He's going to come back better. But we don't want to put everything on him. We don't want to put everything on him. So let's empower ourselves. Let's take action ourselves, but let's also be happy and live a good life. We now know what we're up against. We know what we're up against. And that's better. I mean, let's just take something as simple as social media. You know, there were a lot of articles coming up about problems with social media, what that's doing to our brains, you know, especially for children, that we were too much into that. We're not thinking. Well, now it's come to a head. It's come to a head. So I'm becoming more selective. I'm using social media less. I'm becoming selective about what I put in my brain. Remember, now I'm very much into health, emotional health, physical health, it's all related. But also, you have to think about what are you putting into your brain? What are you putting into your brain? There's junk food for the brain. Now, anything in mainstream media, people think, oh, I'm being informed. Let me just say one of the things that has really struck me. You have to remember they make stuff up. By the way, I'm glad how this whole impeachment thing ended up. We're showing all the videos of the Democrats and what they said. I think the votes happened or it's going to happen, but I mean, we all knew how that was going to turn out. But I'm pleased because now they're forced to defend it. You've seen it. For example, I was noticing on a YouTube video, Forbes, which is a very leftist thing, breaking news. YouTube video, Trump's lawyer plays a video of Democrats and celebrities advocating violence at impeachment trial. Not that they were advocating violence at the trial. That's actually not worded very well. But a lot of people, you could see from the comments to the Forbes breaking news, hadn't actually ever heard that. Now we, on the conservative side, who watch some of these shows, we've heard this over and over again. We've seen it. A lot of them haven't seen it. The same goes to, I'm choosing my language carefully because of YouTube restrictions. The same goes for the election issues. A lot of people don't understand that President Trump won re-election by a lot. By a lot. Now I say that with full confidence. Not because of anything that President Trump said. Like one of the things that struck me this week and prior was like what Liz Cheney, Rhino to the max, said. People have been lied to. Like we're stupid. Like we're stupid, like we can't look at the evidence ourselves. And I did look at the evidence. I looked at a lot of it. I paid attention to that. And it was immense. It was immense. So for those of you who have not looked at it, who haven't paid attention, there are places where you can go and see what happened. But it is immense, and many, many of us know this. The reason I bring this up, I actually kind of violated my Saturday rule when I make a video by talking to my friend Tom, high school buddy, that we reconnected during one of our high school reunions because he's a conservative and he's a really good business person. And I knew him in high school, and so we hadn't talked for a while, so we were talking. Kind of used up some of but I got excited talking to him. He was so disgusted with what happened with the election, the loss, that he's just stayed away from it. And I was talking to him about what happened with the election fraud. And he actually wasn't aware. Because what he'd been doing is just staying away. And I was, how do I say, a little bit surprised that he didn't know a lot of the things I know. So I was just pointing out a few of the things, and he's, I didn't know that, I didn't know that. And no, I mean, this guy works really hard. He's got great businesses, which, by the way, he's moving out of California. He's got like a plant in Nevada, and he's moving to Florida. He's doing all kinds of things. And he also has a lot of money. So I said, one of the things you can do, Tom, as somebody who has a lot of money, is to do what I've done. Whenever a Republican sticks their neck out, send them some money. Now let me tell you why. Now I'm not saying for all of you, because I know a lot of you are on budgets, and that's just not feasible. But I can do it. I'm not giving any more money to Caltech. So yeah, and I'm not taking all these long, big international trips that cost a lot of money. So I can do this. I can do it. Tom can do it even more. I mean, he's got a lot more money coming in. But here's what I found. One of the senators who was, as I was listening, I mean, I didn't listen to the impeachment hearings, okay, except some of the recaps afterwards. But as I was listening, one of the ones I like, because I listened to Dinesh D'Souza and the Steve Bannon's War Room. Those are the things that I listen to the most, and others. But what I liked is, oh, and I sometimes listen to Greg Kelly. He's softer, but he's fun. That's on Newsmax. Was Josh Hawley, the senator from Missouri. He came under tremendous fire from the left, from Democrats. I ended up sending him a total of $2,000. It was kind of a mistake. I meant to send $1,000. I thought, well, this didn't go through. So I sent another $1,000. But I'm glad that I did, okay? I'm not saying I did this, but I feel like I contributed to his sense that, I mean, I contributed, I don't know how much, in terms of, to his sense that he has support around the country. So one of the things I thought for the Republicans is, in the Senate, don't treat this impeachment with respect. Don't listen. Like I heard Senator Mike Lee of Utah talking on Greg Kelly, and I just turned it off. I just thought, what an idiot. Okay, I'm sorry. An idiot. Disgusting. He said, oh, I'm taking very careful notes. Like, anything they say is serious? You're taking notes? Like, this impeachment is anything but a crazy show trial of made-up BS? That's a rhino. But what Josh Hawley did is he went up to the gallery and and he had his legs up and he's reading other material. Like, this is a waste of my time. I love that. I love that. Now, what gave him the courage to do that? Yes, I know the people of Missouri like him and support him, but maybe I helped, and others like me who gave money. So I did talk to my friend Tom, and I said, Tom, okay, one of the things you can do, go to the WinRed site, and he found Josh Hawley, and I said, send him some money. And so he said he would. So I'm now going to be talking to Tom, maybe send it here, because he doesn't have time. I mean, this guy literally works 60 hours a week. He's just a go businessman and a very successful one. So I thought that's something I can do. There's other ways. And Steve Bannon, they're always giving you phone calls you can make, like to Republicans, just make phone calls. I haven't done that, but that's something to do, and I'll do it. And any way you can show your support. So there's various things, like, for example, one of the things that Steve Bannon talked about is this guy named Dan Schultz, SCHULZ, and he has the Precinct Project.wordpress.com. And at the right, you scroll down, and apparently the way to do this for the Republican Party is to get involved at the precinct level. I mean, we need to do this because we're taking over the Republican Party. All this talk about, oh, let's forget the Republican Party, let's start another party. No. That is a mistake, people. And it's a mistake to say, I'm not going to do anything. I just can't take this. Okay? No. But fight in the way that works for you. Okay? Everybody has different talents. But kind of do something, maybe every week, something that says, I am contributing to this country. This country's future. My children's future. I don't know what it is, but you know, and do it. Okay? For me, it's contributing some money, making this video, talking to people. I do talk to people. Pretty much, and then living my life the way I think it should be lived. That's where I am in my life right now, and that's works for me. And I will do make some phone calls, because you just talking to a machine and you say, I don't like that you did this, or I want you to do this. And I always, when I get these things about giving to the Republican Party, I say, I don't want to give to any rhinos, and I want to fix election integrity. And until you address that issue, I'm not interested. I'm not giving any money to you. Another thing to do is, what I notice in our life today is what the left, and I say the left, it is more than the left. It is academia. Disgusting what academia has done. It started there, but it's academia. It's now all the mainstream media. It's now the White House, and it's Congress. So we're getting hit from all sides. But that's not a good way to phrase it, because that sounds scary. We are very powerful. And in a way, I'm looking at it that this is a good thing. Because people are going to see what they're advocating, what this really means. I heard a question being asked of the press secretary. Circle back, Jen, whatever her name is, because she always says, well, I'll circle back to you on that. I mean, somebody asked her, because there's a very real problem about transgenders, allowing transgender males who proclaim they're women, girls, to get into girls and women's sports. I mean, that is huge. My niece, Julie, she's got a college scholarship, and she plays volleyball. And it pays for her tuition. She's in school in Utah. But you can't have boys doing that, playing on girls' teams, because they are boys. Just because they say, well, I'm a girl. I mean, there are definitely sex differences. So these people are not about science. They're not about science. So as you know, Biden had signed something along those lines in one of his executive orders. And this whole thing that feminists and others, the Title IX, that had worked to get women into sports and have their own sports teams, everything, that's going to unravel. But it won't, okay, if we fight it. If we fight it. But the question that was asked, it just sounded so inane. So, if you have trans, I don't know what they call it, trans girls on cis girls sports, cis, C-I-S, means you're normal. Trans means you've decided to be the other sex. Anyway, they asked the question that way, like you've got to know all this woke terminology. And she said, well, I don't really understand the question. And then finally, when they kind of rephrased it, but still using all these terms, she said, Jen, circle back Jen, said, oh, trans rights are human rights. So she didn't even answer the question. Because the question was how does the Biden administration recommend that teams cope with this? Because it's already happened where if boys are allowed to compete with the girls, they win. So they get the scholarships, they get whatever. So I think that's just going to have to work its way through the courts, to be honest. That's another thing I want to say, that, all of this happened so fast, and then with the COVID lockdown, I think people got thrown for a loop in some ways. But these cases are slowly working their way through the courts. There's a lot of this that we're going to be able to fix through other means, because it is idiotic what they're proposing. So I don't watch Michael Knowles as much as I used to, because he's not really talking about the things that interest me so much. But I did watch one where he was talking about this issue, and he said, one of the things we have to do, because he's a conservative Christian and very strong in his beliefs, is he said, we used to think, well, we want to be nice, okay? So if they want to be called this, we would call them this. He says, but we can't do that anymore. We cannot use their language. And other people have talked about, well, what about kids going to school and they're being taught all this stuff? My advice to parents and others who have kids, grandparents, is to inoculate the children. Say, they're going to be teaching you this. They're going to be saying this. Here's how we think about it, okay? Here's how, just you don't need to say anything or whatever, but this is not our values, okay? Don't wait till they hear this stuff and then talk to them, because it's going into like a blank slate in a way. You need to talk to them ahead of time, telling them there's boys and there's girls, and there's some people who are confused on that issue, but we don't believe that. You can use biblical teachings, whatever you need to do. Science teachings, okay? We are mammals. Mammals have two sexes. Occasionally something goes wrong, okay, where somebody has both, but usually you choose one or the other. This idiocy that's going on right now on this issue. There's idiocy in a lot of issues. So part of this part of me, the way I cope now, is to say there is stuff like this always going to be going on. This stuff like this is always going to be going on. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life, my couple of decades that I have left, being angry that people should be this way, people should think this way. No, I want to be curious. Why are they doing this? Because it's not healthy. One of the things I have noticed is that people on the left, people who listen to the mainstream media, they are afraid. They are afraid. They're also racist. they're always looking for these identity politics, but by focusing on that, you actually become racist. I first noticed this when I was having some work done on my house. And so I had a crew come over, mostly Hispanic, and the lead guy was Hispanic. And I would always chat with them in the morning when they started the work about what was going on and this and that. And he said something interesting to me, because he does work in Los Angeles. He said, you know, there's only been 2 people who talked to me. Kind of, he was implying like, treat me like a human being or someone worth talking to. He said, you and Gary Sinise. Now, Gary Sinise is a conservative. And I thought, huh. And then last Tuesday, the maids came over. They come every 2 weeks. These 4 delightful women. 2 of them don't speak English that well. They like Trump. I mean, because I tell them I'm a big Trump supporter. I got my Trump stuff around. And they, oh yeah, he's good. But, and they don't, and so we all hug. I mean, I really love these women because I like people to come into my home that have like a good energy. They're like warm. They're warm, lovely human beings. And as they were leaving last Tuesday, and I'm saying goodbye to them at the door, they said, you're our favorite spot to come to. And I said, wow, thank you. Like, why? And they said, because most people are kind of really rude to us. Like, come in, do your work. And I'm thinking, they're working in this area. They're working in an area where there's all these liberals. They're the ones that are concerned about racism. Why is it that the conservatives are less so? You know, I was thinking, because a lot of people use white supremacy, but are you going for, I don't know, black supremacy? Not the smart blacks, they're not doing that. But what am I supposed to think when I see a few hapless, they looked hapless, okay? The video of people going into the Capitol. It's like, oh, okay, looking around, you know, walking in. Because there weren't that many. They weren't crowded. They weren't angry. And one of the cops was just saying, hey, you know, you guys should go in the other room. And they're listening to him, whatever. But most of them are white. And then you look at the footage of a lot of the black, now there were white activists too, but for the BLM, it's like, why are they allowed to loot like that, okay? And burn buildings. Now the vast majority of black people are not like that at all, because you also saw video of blacks that were just very upset about what was happening in their community. So I know that. But when you allow a different standard of justice, that creates resentment. Because one of the things I'm really interested in is, how does the brain work, okay? So when I see those images, I'm thinking, those are not black people. That's something else. Those are people who are sick. I have to, because I don't want those images in my head. And fortunately, my experience with minorities has been completely different. And so I sometimes just play around with it. Like I see somebody who's of a different race or whatever, I think, what's the first thought that comes into my head? Because you are not responsible for the first thought that comes in your head. So why are liberals always talking about institutional racism? It's because they're racist. They know the thoughts that pop in their head. And they think maybe all white people, if you want to call me white, whatever that means, they think all white people are like that. And then you've got people who, and this happens with women too, I don't like this at all. As a former feminist, I don't even like to use that word because of what has happened to feminism. But I don't like special privileges for women, because that actually backfires, creates resentment. I mean, you want to get rid of special privilege, but it's different now. I mean, let's call this is reverse racism. This is not about white supremacy, it's about black supremacy. Okay? It's about female supremacy. Let's call it what it is. And that's not right either. And that's going to create more division among people. So I'm really not liking this at all. I want to tell you about, I highly, highly encourage you to get this book. It just came out, Patrick Moore. He's like Tony Heller, he's really good. And he had made a video that was really excellent along those lines, because he's pointing out his basic premise, and he's a good writer. He's a very good writer. This is very readable. He's pointing out that a lot of the things we use to scare people regarding climate and the environment are things that we can't actually see. So they make a, so let me just read you some of the titles. Africa's oldest baobab trees are dying, and they were attributing it to climate change. And I mean, he's funny. He says, it's like having an article, China's oldest people are dying. But somebody asked me about this in one of my videos. So chapter 10, Ocean Acidification, a Complete Fabrication. So I was reading that because I actually had felt that as well. Because one of the things, as I've mentioned before, I'm very interested in the history of the Earth. And we've had much, much higher CO2 levels, especially when life started evolving in the oceans. Especially when we had the multicellular life, the Cambrian explosion 543 million years ago. In the Ediacaran before that, we also had some multicellular life. So it's basically 1 billion years ago. You had multicellular life. How can you have coral reefs, for example, when the CO2 levels were so much higher? And now they're historically at very, very low levels. So why would that be a problem if the CO2 levels go up a bit? Life can handle that. So all these scare stories, and they even use the term acidification. It's not acidic. It's just less alkaline. But the important point is to think about the range. So when you have a pH balance, it's the same thing as global temperatures. There's not like one global temperature. What gets you are the extremes, okay? That's what gets you. So it varies from place to place, the pH of the ocean, because it's all alkaline. There's no place where it's acidic. But if you said base or alkaline, that's not scary to people. Acid's scary. And there's none of that. I mean, I could go into the whole story, but the really good scientists who disputed it, Peter Ridd at Queensland, they actually got him fired because he said, well, Great Barrier Reef is okay. That was his area of study. And I listened to an interview with him, the good scientists are all very mild, low-key. But, I mean, what's the message that sends to other scientists? Keep your mouth shut. There's no scientist that's going to be in climate science at any university. I'm telling you, no scientist can speak or look into these issues. So I was thinking, right now we got these major cold spells. I was watching a Tony Heller video. You have to go to YouTube to see it. But it was like minus 52 degrees C. Oh my God, that is so cold in Kazakhstan. And animals, dogs, everything were just frozen in place. I mean, it was like shocking to see how cold it was. Now you could say, well, you know, there's weather, it's going to be changing sometimes. But believe me, when it gets hot, we go through hot periods, that gets played up majorly. But this wasn't supposed to happen. Everything was supposed to be getting warmer. I know, because I was concerned one time. So more than 20 years ago, I was thinking about global warming. But Patrick Moore, as I mentioned in my walkaway video where I talked about this, I went to a conference because he was for nuclear power. And at the very end of his keynote speech, he said, I don't really go for this whole global warming thing, or something to that. And I always remember, because this was September 2008, that I mentally wrote him off. To my shame and chagrin today. Why would I write him off? See, today I would say, well, that's a really smart guy. I like the other stuff that he says. Why does he think that way? But that's not how the left is taught to think. You dismiss some people if they have certain thoughts. You just dismiss them. They're not okay. Instead of being curious. Like now, I'd be curious. Like, well, that's interesting. I mean, I don't agree, but why? Why do you think that? I could have asked him, but I didn't. But I did change. I was thinking today, what made me change? What started it? Well, I was looking into energy issues. My late husband, Harold, and I got interested in energy issues. So that's why we went to this conference. But I think the real key, because I was kind of a deep nature type of person, thinking it'd be great to live off the land. Not that I wanted to do all that work, but I was into that. And I read Matt Ridley's book, The Rational Optimist. Came out in 2010. And that's what started changing me. Like, I don't really want to start from scratch with everything. That technology is good, and the future just keeps getting better and better. And at the time, I had signed up for 2 backpacking trips with the Sierra Club. And I thought, why do I want to do that? I canceled the trips and said, I'm going to go travel and hike in the Alps. Because, you know, you can just take a little day pack, you have and at the Alps, the nice thing about hiking in the Alps, all throughout Europe. So my friend John and I, we were on a lot of those trips. The nice thing about hiking in the Alps is they have these refuges, depending on what the language was. But anyway, you're coming around a trail on the Alps, it's beautiful, and they have a place, and you can go in, people could have a beer, but I could have a cappuccino. And if there's one thing I'm totally addicted to, it's coffee, cappuccino, whatever. I love coffee. And you could relax, you could have it, and then continue on with your hike. It was like, how did they get this thing out in the middle of nowhere? So anyway, the point being is, and then I could sleep in a nice inn at night and take a shower. Why would I make my back hurt carrying this big old backpack, going out and putting up a tent and just being miserable? So that changed in 2010. And it just got me thinking about how much I like technology, I always knew I liked technology, but why would I want to go back to some nature thing? Because as Alex Epstein has often said, you know, nature is cruel, awful. Nature on its own is not a good thing. So I really encourage you to get this book. Now, I will but I also read this book some time ago, Confessions of a Greenpeace Dropout, because he helped start Greenpeace, Patrick Moore. And this was really good because this guy knows ecology, and I understood about forest management. I mean, he talked about things that I didn't know anything about, and why it's good to use wood and paper, things like that. Because I always thought, oh, you want to save paper, because you want to save trees. No, growing forests is good. If you want to read this one too, that's a good one. But I actually contributed $1,000 to him on GoFundMe. And I wrote a note saying, I met you in 2008, and you've been very influential. So I was happy to support it. And so I encourage you to get that book. It's really good reading. You'll learn a lot. It's excellent. And that's sort of one of the things that I've been doing. It's fun for me to study and learn new things. I don't want to just be keeping up with the daily news. That's not healthy for me. I like to kind of philosophize, I like to think, and that's why this venue is very nice for me, to be able to talk to you and share some of my thoughts about what's going on. So I jotted down some thoughts, and one of the things is, do what you can do, but another thing is I'm kind of convinced that some of this on the Democratic side, the left, is going to self-implode. And so there's part of me that says, let's just wait a bit. We don't have to, oh my God, let's get rid of these people right now. Well, we'll get rid of them in 2022. Those rhinos are out. They are out, okay? Not supporting them at all. And I used to wonder, why would the Democrats put forth Joe Biden? I mean, an obviously mentally incapacitated guy. But I realize now that he's kind of perfect for them, because he presents an image of someone who's not threatening. And also, you don't have any videos anymore because of social distancing of him creepily groping people, women, little girls. I mean, it is just really awful to see the way he'd sniff and touch, and so he doesn't really talk much, but he just says these canned little lines, and he smiles. He doesn't look scary. Because my original thought was that, okay, they're going to get rid of him real fast to get Harris in, Kamala Harris. But now I'm thinking, you notice she kind of stays away? She's not out there talking a lot, because while right now Joe Biden doesn't excite this visceral dislike, she does. She has this weird laugh. She's fake. Her history is horrible. So she doesn't have I think if she were there as the face of the Democratic Party, as president, people would be upset. Democrats would be upset, because remember, when she ran, she started out high because she's an attractive woman or whatever, and then every time she went downhill. And so she dropped out, and she's a bad manager. She's not smart in terms of, she had her sister or something managing her campaign. I mean, she was just a mess. So I think they want to keep Joe Biden propped up as this half-dead man, although he doesn't appear half-dead. But I know there's a lot of things that you can do if you're not out too long, out in public too long. If you rest the person up, I used to have to do this with Harold at the end when he would meet with people when he wasn't doing so well. You could get him to do pretty well for a very short period of time, but he couldn't go all day. There's no way. There's no way. Like an hour, maybe 2 hours. and you wouldn't want to have him answer too many questions. So you had to work that, okay? And then make sure he had his cup of coffee just before. There's a lot you have to do. And I'm sure they've got all kinds of drugs they give him. So he can be okay for a very short period of time. But, they're saying now that they want, even for the press secretary, you need to give them the questions ahead of time. At what point, not that these are really reporters, but at what point will they just get tired of it? Maybe not. They're not really investigative reporters, but like the scientists not being able to question or do anything regarding climate issues, what can these reporters do? If you work for one of these major publications, you're not really free to write a good story, because these publications now have a narrative. So that's an interesting thing to me. It's like there's a ministry of truth. This is the truth. They'll say science says, well, that's BS, okay? But this is the truth. There's no election fraud. This is the truth. And so I like what Debbie Georgatos said, was like, what is this, the ministry of truth? So if I'm going to talk to somebody and they say this fact, I'll say, what are you, the ministry of truth? I can't question it. Think of these little comebacks in your head and be ready for them. Like, I've decided, like the whole mask thing when I'm out and about, is I don't want to be an angry person. So I smile at people, even if they're wearing a mask. I talk to them. I used to be like, I had this thought, oh, dystopian nightmare. And I was really making myself miserable. But I thought, I don't know these people. I don't know why they're wearing a mask. Maybe they really are afraid. Maybe they just think, and as long as they don't bother me, I'm cool, right? And if they're wearing a mask, I make a point not to get too close, because I feel like maybe they really are scared, okay? What a way to live your life, but I'm not going to be bothered about it. But I was walking with Robert in the park after we did our run, and this guy, not an older guy, I don't know, maybe he was 35 or 40, let's say, because I didn't get a good look. He walked by and he said, F you, wearing a mask. And Robert didn't hear, but I looked back and I said, hey, COVID's not going to kill you. I said, you're gonna die of a heart attack. So that's my saying. But I don't let that go by. But think about that, because there were a lot of people that weren't wearing masks. So he's going out there thinking it's his duty to tell all these people, like, I care? You just look like an idiot. And, if that's what you're spewing, oh my God. That's what kills most people, by the way. Something to do with your heart. That's how most people die. And there's cancer, and then there's pulmonary issues. So it's a stroke, heart attack, or whatever. That is the number one thing that gets you in the end. So have a little saying, but don't. I think on a personal level, we all have to decide how we're going to cope with this. So I was thinking about something Dinesh D'Souza in his podcast said, because he said his wife Debbie, she's more afraid of the virus, she wears the mask and all that. But she said she was in the grocery store and she noticed that people weren't looking at each other. People weren't interacting. It was weird. And it was something she had noticed in other countries. And I noticed that. I've traveled all over the world. And I noticed in some countries, particularly ones under communist domination, like in Mongolia too, even the kids, when I was in Mongolia, and some places in Moscow, particularly Leningrad, now St. Petersburg. It's like you walk by and they don't look at you. They're not curious. Even the kids aren't curious. It's like you're taught when you're in that system to be safe. Don't interact with people. Don't show any emotion. Don't be friendly, which is completely the opposite of how Americans are. We're like, hey, how you doing, right? And so Debbie D'Souza noticed that, and so Dinesh D'Souza was talking about it, and I said to myself, that is so true. I am not going to be like that. I'm going to make eye contact with people. I'm going to smile. I'm going to wave. I'm going to do something, and people are pretty friendly. But that is my small part, because I don't want to be that kind of society, okay? I'm not going there. I'm not going to adopt the left's language, okay? I'm not going to go there, okay? It is wrong what we're doing to kids regarding allowing a child to select their sex. Kids go through all kinds of confusing things. And let them, they like to think about and then just say, oh, there's something weird there. Because, throughout history, we've known stories of a parent kind of wishing they had a son or wishing they had a daughter. And if a child picks up on that, oh my God, what's going to happen? And if mommy loves you more, if you put on a dress, there's a lot of sick people out there. And so to do that to a child, I have to let that go, okay? There's a lot of bad stuff happening. At least we're not beating kids mercilessly. That's gone, and I'm very glad for that. And of course there's abuse that children are putting up with. I can't take that on. If it's in front of me and there's something I can do, I will do it. But I don't think it's a good idea. All this cleanliness and hygiene, cleaning constantly. What are we doing to people's immune systems? By the way, one of the things, I love to study stuff, so I bought this. I'm not recommending necessarily that you buy it, but I want to understand the immune system better. Because one of the things I'm really curious about is, what are we doing to our immune systems? This whole COVID thing, and I was watching a Dave Rubin interview with some doctors. We're really not allowing doctors to question. What I find is that nobody is allowed to talk about possible treatments ahead of time, whether it be ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine. Why is that? Okay, you have to go to the hospital. Now apparently, once you get to the hospital, there's things that they try to do. But why do you have to wait for it to get that bad? Why all this push for other things? That's not right. So I think another thing in today's world is you literally cannot rely just on the medical profession. One of the things I noticed, now many parents may notice this with your kids, because you take them to the doctor. Try to avoid going to the doctor as much as possible. Don't run to the doctor for everything. When I was growing up, we never basically went to the doctor. I did go to the doctor because I broke my arm. My sister cut her leg. She had to get stitches. And Denise, my sister, got sick when she was little, and the doctor came to the house. He must have given her antibiotics because she got better. But that was kind of scary. But we didn't run to the doctor. And I think that was good. I didn't even go to a dentist until I was 16, I think. So why are you having your kids go to the dentist? Why are they getting cavities? That's not natural. Maybe they're having too much sugar in their mouth. But those are minor things. But I think with this ministry of truth aspect, where these algorithms and then the newspapers, they are not allowing, it's affected the medical community where you cannot talk about freely other possibilities in treatment. Whereas doctors used to be free to do that. That was the doctor-patient relationship, and so they could try different treatments. And in many cases now, they can't do that. It's kind of like the whole climate thing. Like, I love earth sciences. Why are we not studying the climate? Nobody can study the climate now. We should be able to understand what is going on. Why do we get these freezing spells? Why do we? Because right now, everything is CO2, like it's a knob. You know, CO2 goes up, this happens. And so then they also just make stuff up. They make stuff up. So they come up with these preposterous things for funding, but you can't say, I mean, there are so many different like ocean cycles and this and that. You gotta throw in the climate change. You gotta put some alarmism in, or you will not get published, okay? And what is peer review? I don't even think we should have peer review in science anymore. I mean, they call it PAL review, but what does that mean? Other scientists say what you did was okay. But how do we have breakthroughs in science? It's because one scientist thinks differently. And what if at first no scientists agree? They should be able to get their research out there. But of course, who's funding that research? I'm now thinking we shouldn't even have the government fund research. Because if the government is funding it, then you're going to get some kind of political motivation behind it. I haven't talked about this, but here's something I found interesting. So, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, 8 years ago, there was a biology in the biology department at Caltech, a professor, who was studying nicotine's effect on the brain. And I watched his I watched his presentation, and I asked him afterwards, and it was very impressive because nicotine helps your dopaminergic neurons, which is something you lose in Parkinson's. So there's all kinds of interesting evidence. For example, it also helps schizophrenics. A huge number of schizophrenics smoke cigarettes. And a lot of people who smoke, they have lung problems, they have this and that, but they're less likely to get Parkinson's. Don't quote me on that one. I don't remember it for sure. But it seems to have, in fact, the Michael J. Fox Foundation funded some looking at nicotine. But this guy had so much trouble with his research because in the desire to get people to not smoke, they didn't want to say anything, allow anything good to be said about nicotine. So I did my own kind of looking into, there were some good articles about nicotine. Nicotine is beneficial. There's a reason people smoke. So that got me interested in vaping. Like, it's fantastic that kids would vape, people would vape. Because basically, now not when you have all those impurities in it, that's not a good thing. So I was troubled at the beginning of the Trump administration that they were, Alex Azar and Melania Trump were fighting vaping. I thought, that's not good. But anyway, what I did for myself, I thought, wow, nicotine, this is really beneficial. Because most people, as they get older, have a little bit of Parkinson's. Because you lose some of your dopaminergic neurons. And this literally helps build those up, if you will. And so what people were doing, so as you get older, you know, a lot of times older people, I'm not saying it's always due to this, they kind of have tremors, okay? We all kind of develop teensy bits of that. So I thought, and then I thought, well, wait a minute, what do I think of an old smoker? Well, my picture of an old smoker is somebody going, but being really mentally sharp. I don't see him being like, I don't know, kind of senile and smoking. They're smart. I mean, they're sharp. cuss, sharp old cuss. So I thought about this, and I thought, oh, okay, nicotine's really addictive. But I'm addicted to caffeine. So what if I chew nicotine gum? Am I going to become addicted to nicotine? But then I looked online and I thought, there's nicotine gum all over the world. This is before vaping took off. There's nicotine gum everywhere. So I'll probably always be able to get nicotine gum. So I went and bought nicotine gum. And I also talked to a lot of people at Caltech that I'm chewing nicotine gum. But it never really worked for me. And some days I would forget. I never got addicted. I didn't like the way my brain felt, which is weird because I love anything that's like a stimulant. I love coffee. I tried cocaine once. I thought, it's like a cup of coffee. This was a long time ago, back in the 70s when people tried everything. But like marijuana, I never liked marijuana, okay? I didn't like the way I felt because that made me paranoid. But nicotine, I felt kind of weird spacing in my head. I didn't like it. Unless it was like really exercising hard. But I didn't like it, and eventually I just stopped doing it. And then I tried vaping, and I didn't really like that either. I just didn't like it, okay? So I never got addicted, despite all I'd read. But I was watching a video about a week ago by this one woman who was a doctor, but not that doctors know, but she had done a lot of research into various things about neurotransmitters for your brain. And I didn't agree with everything that she said, but she had a lot of interesting things to say. And she said, if your brain is deficient in something, then nicotine's going to really help you. But if you've already got a lot of that, it won't. And I thought, that's why it didn't work for me. That makes sense. Okay? But if you're a person who craves nicotine and it really makes you feel better, then by all means, vape, chew nicotine gum, because that's good for your brain, but it wasn't good for my brain. And this goes for a whole host of things where they make these blanket statements, okay? See how it affects you. And that goes for your loved ones. See how it affects you. I was talking to a friend of mine, and she was a long-time smoker, and she goes, sometimes I do vape if I just need to feel calm. She sort of feels guilty about occasionally smoking. And I said, so you feel calm when you do it, so why not do it? It's giving your brain something that it needs, and it's good for your brain. I mean, she's very sharp. Not that it's because of the nicotine, but it clearly hasn't hurt her. And so I'm thinking, as long as you're not getting the tar and all that stuff in your lungs, and nicotine helps you, then that says it's doing something for your brain that your brain needs. It just didn't do it for me. So that's another area, aside from diet and everything else, where I differ from the medical consensus. Because there's an agenda. They wanted to downplay smoking. So nicotine was the baby that got thrown out with the bathwater. Nicotine is very valuable for some people. And if you go for it. And now on another happy note, happy to me, I've been following this climate change issue for quite some time, as you know. And I really got into it, I would say 2015, because that's why I became a Republican. But I do think not as many people believe it now. And I think that was due to President Trump and his administration. By having someone, he didn't directly take it on, because he found if he called it a hoax, or whatever, if he went too far, the attacks, okay? But you had an administration that didn't make that a focus. He took it off the website. He started the Keystone XL pipeline, and the Dakota Access pipeline, and he made us close to energy independent. So people saw that could be done, and a few more people spoke out against the whole alarmism stuff. So I kind of think, I just find that if I broach that subject with somebody, anybody, left or right, I don't get, let me tell you, it was hard at first, because I would just bring this topic up with somebody, and some people literally would like shrink back in horror. Not a scientist, but just like people at the beach, I bring it up or whatever, and it's like, you are a flat earther or something. I mean, they really bought into it, that this is what the science is. So I feel more hopeful on that score, because that's another one we have to fight. None of that is good, people. Either on an electricity standpoint, industry standpoint, the reliability of our grid standpoint, an environmental standpoint. I mean, I don't want our beautiful deserts and areas just filled with wind turbines built in China. I mean, with indestructible materials. I mean, the environmental aspects of that. And by the way, people who really care about the environment, they know renewables absolutely are not the answer. I mean, you even had Michael Moore make a film, which was, I think, taken down from YouTube, but you had Michael Schellenberger, a longtime activist, saying, look, renewables are not the way to go. And the smart people know that is not going to work. So they'll play their little games. They'll say they're doing it like Amazon. Oh yeah, we're 100% renewable. That is just BS. There's all kinds of little accounting games you can play. It's sort of like buying carbon credits, your indulgences. You can get away with it. It's like, it's not real. So I'm hopeful that people can see this, and it's going to hurt some people when their energy costs go up, when a big portion of your monthly income has to do with paying bills related to energy. I mean, it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem. If electricity cost goes up. So I was having this discussion with Robert, because he thought, well, whatever, if they're electric cars. And I said, well, let's look at it this way. I have enough money to afford electricity, Robert, whatever the cost is. But when you come to visit me on Fridays, and if you have an electric car, what if I was on a budget and you need to charge your car on my electricity, my sometimes unreliable electricity, because it's renewable? Am I gonna wanna, I mean, if I went to visit my niece and her family, which I do, I wouldn't wanna up their energy bill because I have to recharge my car. I mean, there's going to be all kinds of things like that. And I lived through the 70s with the gas lines and a really rude boyfriend, Ken. He was terrible because he valiantly walked to my apartment, and because, he didn't want to use gas. And then he was mad at me because I didn't offer to drive him back in my little Volkswagen. And I'm like, I need that gas in my car to get to school. And he was kind of, if you really cared about me, you'd do that. Oh my God. My nieces and other friend, Julie, who are in their 20s, early 30s, they're so much smarter than I was at that time. I mean, why would I put up with that? It's like amazing to me. But I do remember worrying about, am I going to be able to fill up my car with gas? How am I going to get to school? Okay, now maybe you don't go to school, maybe you have Zoom calls. But if the electricity goes out, what do you do? Okay? These young people who don't understand that, they have problems, right? They have problems. they don't understand. They take all this for granted and they latch on to certain things. Well, maybe they just have to learn. Maybe they just have to learn. Turns out I always have a lot to talk about. I hope, well, we'll see if it's interesting to you. One of the things I do notice with YouTube is I have to have a very anodyne, safe sounding email, but apparently their algorithm has tagged me as a conservative because it's very consistent that every week I go down 10 subscribers. Now, I don't know if that really matters. What matters are the people who subscribe and hit the bell so that, you don't hit it, but you press it, so that you get notification of my videos. Those people aren't going away. And there's about 1,000 of you maybe. But the people who just subscribed and never got notification, those are just getting shaved off. So I tried to experiment because I used to put a little American flag and I thought maybe that's what's doing it. So I didn't do that last week, didn't matter. I'm already on. Let's just shave. So if you like this video or like this type of talk, the only way it will ever grow, and it doesn't need to grow if there's not an audience. This is for me and for those that like it. You can send it to somebody if you think they would like it. I'm not for everybody. And another thing I'm going to do, when I first started out, I thought, oh, I love this dialogue, and writing. But I've been reading my old journals, and what really struck me is how much, it's like, I got to catch up with my computer work. I've got to do this. I got to pay bills. I've got to answer emails. That was a continuing complaint of mine, to keep up with my emails. I'm thinking, well, why would I put that on myself now? Because there was this thing like, I want to answer, respond to the comments. And I'm not saying I won't ever respond, but I'm not going to make a commitment to do that. Because one of the things I'm doing for my life is saying I'm not doing these things that were not helping me. If I'm answering comments, then I'm not studying these books, which is what I really want to do. That's what gives me pleasure. And it's not just that. I spend a lot of time exercising and doing amazing yoga stretches. Amazing, which I can still do. So that's important to me. And every day I do 20 push-ups, I can do that, and 5 chin-ups. Most of the days I run in the park, walk in the park, and I do back bends, I do forward bends. I'm very, very flexible. And it makes me happy. Even when I was a kid, I liked doing that. So I'm not going to take on things that I don't want to do. And I keep up with my chores, I keep up with stuff, but it doesn't feel overwhelming. So I read all your comments. But let me point out, every once in a while, to let you know that I've read it and I really liked what you had to say and that I saw it, I put a heart, because the heart can only come from me. If I just put I like, you don't necessarily know if it was I was the one who liked it or somebody else liked it. But sometimes I cannot find your comment. So you have to reply directly, okay? If you put the comment in let's say somebody else makes a comment and then you comment on their comment, I don't really have a way of finding that. So it dismays me because I get the email and I can read what you said. I go, oh, I want to put a heart, and I go to it and I can't find it. I'm like, where is this thing? And I spend some time looking for it. I'm like, sorry, I can't find it, okay? But if you just reply directly, I can go to my thing and say newest first, and right past the pinned comment, there will be your comment, and I can respond to it. So if you don't hear from me, that's why. If you don't get any kind of response. And then sometimes with the older videos, it doesn't show up. So every once in a while, I'll see somebody, oh, they looked at that video. And I'll look and go, oh my gosh, look at these other people that looked at it and made a comment. And then so 2 months later, you'll see that I gave it a heart or loved your comment. So anyway, that's how it goes. I actually have more to say, but this is long enough. But fortunately, it won't take a long time to upload. And I'm just gonna see how many people will watch these videos. If it's still something that you enjoy. I enjoy it doing it this way. But let's see how you all feel. And I may do it next week or I may skip next week. We'll see how I feel. I kind of think I'll do it, but no promises. But I don't think I'll go more than 2 weeks because there's always stuff to say. Talk to you in a week or two. Bye.